I remember crying on the day of my graduation, not because I was happy it was over, but because I knew this period where I felt protected was ended. And I was about to jump into a cage with nobody behind me anymore there to protect me. And that was really the start of years of asking myself one question I could never seem to answer. What do I really want to do? So if you're still asking yourself that in your 30s, your 40s, trying things, and every time something off, and every time something's off, and you start wondering if something's wrong with you, stay with me. By the end of this episode, I'm going to give you the exact question I ask myself now. Instead of what job do I want? So if you're still asking yourself that in your 30s or your 40s, trying things, and every time something's off, and you start wondering if it's something wrong with you, stay with me. By the end of this episode, I'm going to give you the exact question I ask myself instead of what job do I want. I change how I think about all of this. So let's start. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Marysaba. I'm a life coach and conflict mediator, and in every episode, I question the expectations we grow up with and dig into what's really hiding behind all those shirts that quietly shapes our life. Today's topic is one I see alive in lots of people I know, including myself. What is really the job of my dreams? It can be at the the daydreamers. It can be the daydreamers topic, right? Imagining a future doing something you love the way you love it. It can be the daydreamers topic, right? Like imagining a future doing something you love the way you love. But it can also be a really frustrating one, especially once reality shows up and the rules of the working world just don't match how you imagine the job at all. It's frustrating to hit your 30s and 40s and still be asking yourself what job actually works for you. And honestly, the more you try, the worse it gets. Because every new job means adapting all over again. And that might work for a few months, and then you just burn out again. And there's always something, the colleagues, the hours, the tasks. So you keep changing jobs and keep asking yourself the same question. Maybe you got a general idea, but nothing out there seems to really match it. Or the thing that would match, it feels like far away, hard to get, needs skills you don't have. So yeah, welcome to your 30s or your 40s. If you're one of those people, you just know that you're not alone. And that's very important. I've been there more times than you can count in life. I honestly can't tell you how many jobs I've done, either because I was interested or just to pay bills, thinking maybe I'd like it, and then I would say pretty fast, realizing that no, that's not what I want. There's always something missing, something that just didn't feel right. And by month 6, I'd be waking up frustrated, hating my life, and eventually quitting, only then to land in a pretty similar situation in the next job. So, yeah, that's very frustrating. And I have to be honest with you, I've judged myself for this a lot. So, if you're judging yourself, just like, there's someone else here feeling exactly like you. There is a voice in my head telling me how inconsistent I am, that I'll never figure this out. But, and pay attention here, the voice has a name, and it's called social expectations. And when I actually get curious and ask the voice why, when I actually get curious and ask the voice why he thinks am I so inconsistent, and when I actually get curious and ask the voice why he thinks I'm so inconsistent, the answer is because he believes I should find one job instead until retirement. But is that really my voice? Well, of course not. That society voice shouting in my head. And it makes me feel ashamed, like my skills are never enough, like my CV is just a pile of confusing, consistent experiences. But why the shame, honestly? When I actually look at my life outside and what society expects, I see clearly this is just a construction. Because, like, who decided I should stay in one job for life? My real voice asks something completely different. How could I possibly stay in the same job if I keep evolving, if my interests keep changing? So society is built on this idea that technology changes, fashion changes, but people don't, or not really. Sure, material needs can change, right? Like smaller house to a bigger one, cheaper car to a nicer one. So apparently I should stay in the same job to keep up with that. But that's not how my brain works. And if you're here listening, yours probably doesn't work like that either. If you feel ashamed, confused, behind, like an outsider and lonely because you keep doing things that don't match what you actually want, well, probably don't bring things like society. So, what do you want? And that question can just pound in your head for months, sometimes years, and no answer comes. Or worse, more and more ideas show up, and you're going around in circles. So having lots of skills, lots of inspiration, lots of ideas, but all this just become frustration because you have to pick one thing to put in your energy basket, one thing to put your energy into, and that feels almost impossible. For all the reason I just said, like your own thoughts, your own expectations, lack of skills, how hard it is to even find the right job. Now, I can't hand you a job in this episode. Unfortunately, no. You won't find a job in this episode. But what can I do is help you reflect on what you actually like to achieve. And maybe from there, something more concrete starts to actually take shape. So, as I said at the beginning, when I finished university, I was crying because I was desperate to finish university. And why I was desperate? And why I was desperate? Because while I was doing university, I felt invincible. Honestly, I thought I get whatever I wanted. Those were incredible years. Frankly, I won't complain about a single thing that happened during uni because I took every opportunity I could. I was very smart and I'm very proud of them, Marysaba. I took a short project in Croatia. I moved to Paris. I moved to Montreal. I moved to Los Angeles for my master research. And all thanks to uni, of course, thanks to my parents as well, who were supporting me. But uni got like all scholarship that I needed to do these experiences. So I felt that everything was possible. I never failed to reach a goal. And that made me feel unstoppable. But then uni ended and reality started and everything changed. So I went into the job search with that unstoppable belief that I could get everything I wanted. So I got out of uni, studying cinema, and I was like, okay, I want to work in a film festival. But I had no planning experience at all. But as I said, I didn't stop trying. And I got a job that paid me 400 euros a month. And technically, it was a paid volunteering position. I worked 8 hours per day, Monday to Friday, and I could only pay my rent. After this experience came this long stretch of jobs from nowhere that were really not my ideals at all. Like I worked in a company that was trading like raw materials. Um, and then I worked also in a company that was selling cars. I worked like for film, also a company that sold cars. It's just that when I used to do like these paying bills jobs, I always quit around like more like 6 months, because I always quit like after like 6 months more or less, because I got to, because at a certain point I was waking up in the morning feeling like, but why? I was waking up in the morning thinking like, why am I waking up at 6 a.m. for this? Why am I waking up to make my boss richer while I'm selling cars or raw materials? And, you know, like for me, it didn't make sense to do this kind of jobs. I also remember that I worked in multiplex cinema, and actually, that was not a bad job at all. But you can't believe how many nasty and angry people go to watch a movie. Guys, you can't imagine. So I also quit the job because I understood that working with public was really not my passion. And maybe you recognize yourself in this. And maybe your family kept telling you, just keep the job. And you can't follow their advice because you could feel your mental health, because for you, your mental health matter more. Or maybe you're still in the job right now, wondering what else is out there, unable to quit until you find the job, the one in capital letters that's finally going to make you feel fulfilled, creative, alive. And generally, I believe the job exists. Really, like you can call me genuine, and I genuinely believe the job exists. I really do. Sure, there are always been parts of any job you don't love, and then maybe you even hate. But if a job gives me, at least if I talk about myself, if a job keeps me creative and passionate, that's the jackpot. At least for this season of my life. So maybe the secret isn't finding the job. Maybe it's finding what makes you feel alive and checking whether the job in front of you actually gives you that. Maybe it's finding what makes you feel alive. I always have, I, I've always had this strong drive to get where I want to go. And some jobs along the way met other needs of mine, which were not creativity and aliveness and passion. But for example, when I was working as a wedding planner, I didn't feed my need for passion and creativity, but I generally felt other. When I was a wedding planner, I didn't feed my need for passion and creativity. Not because in wedding planner there is no creativity. There is all the part of like planning, like decoration and flowers, but that's not really my thing. That's not my cup of tea. So I was doing more like contracts, networking, negotiating, organization, and I like that part actually. I met my need for order, organization, feeling useful, but it never touched that the wish for creativity because I just wasn't passionate really about weddings. My dream was always to work in a film festival, so I was planning, but not the right thing for me, let's say. And I noticed myself becoming quite rigid, anxious, on edge from constantly managing everyone else's needs. At the end of our wedding, I remember that the bride and groom were thanking me for doing such an amazing job, and my frustration was so high, I couldn't even take the compliment. And that's when I knew something was missing. And it took me like to start my coaching journey to actually name what it was. Now, I'm not saying that my coaching business is amazing and I just fulfilled everything I love because I have anxieties running my own business and I'm working on that. But I feel so free being creative and putting my own passion into something that's actually mine. So, leaving the wedding planning behind and jumping into the unknown, despite all challenges, has been the most enriching and most growth filled stretch of my life. My sense of purpose got clearer. Helping people build an authentic lifestyle, helping people face conflict with empathy and love makes me feel alive, creative, open, full of ideas. Something that the other jobs were just like putting those things like in a drawer, a mental drawer. So those things that I like, like creative and passion, were just being put aside while I was giving priority to organization, feeling useful, responsible. So I decided to risk it. And of course, I'm grateful that I have people around me who love me and support me and help me to make this possible. But is this the end of the road? So I'm going to be a coach forever? Frankly, I don't think so. I still believe I can change and my needs can shift and things evolve. Maybe there come a time I need to go back to an office job to pay my bills. And honestly, I'll try to avoid that for as long as I can because I know exactly how empty it leaves me. But if it happens, maybe who knows, one day I'll be able to face it with less frustration that I can imagine right now. And okay, so now here's the question I promised you at the beginning of the podcast. If you had to name one or two things a job should actually give you, what would they be? And in nonviolent communication, which is the method I use both in my work and in my own personal life, needs sit at the center of everything, our days, our goals, all of it. So here what this means in practice. What's used to thinking about goals? So this is what means in practice. We are used to thinking about goals as concrete steps. So for example, let's imagine me before being a wedding planner. I was like, I want a job planning events. And that's literally what I used to tell myself. But you can go one layer deeper and ask, okay, if I got a job, what would I actually get from it? And from me, and for me, I would answer like an organized environment, clarity, good communication, and still I can go underneath that. What personal needs does he actually meet? And I would say again, organization, but also feeling useful to others, responsible, excited on events days, feeling important, recognized, needed by others. So can you see the needs hiding inside I want to plan events? Naming them changed everything for me because I realized that I want an environment that's organized, they communicate openly, and that's about the environment, but also has to meet my needs of feeling useful, responsible, and organized. So then I could ask myself, is it actually what I want? Well, right now, where I am right now in my life, I would say yes and no, because I still like planning, but I don't like the responsibilities. I learned that being fully accountable for an event doesn't give me more recognition, but it just gives me more stress, anxiety, and pressure. And that's a big part of why I stepped away from weddings. If I ever went back to events, I think I'd look for an assistant role and not the one carrying the full weight. So see how much clearer things get. Just asking those questions, I understood I want an organized, communicative environment and that I don't want the weight of responsibilities because they cost too much for me. So I would go for an assistant role and still meeting the needs of organization, responsibility, excitement on the event's day. So you can do this with your own experiences, your own goals, your own ideas, and see what comes up. So use your past experiences as a starting data. What didn't work in a previous environment? What do you now know you don't want anymore, at least for this season of your life? This exercise really helps you get clarity on what you want right now. And because our needs change, whenever you catch yourself complaining about something in work again, that's your cue to check whether your needs have shifted. So starting from the need instead of the goal, I want to get there gives you your real awareness and clarity instead of fighting like windmills, and gives you your real awareness and clarity and points you towards something you actually know is workable for you. And you can also add boundaries into this. How many hours a week can you realistically work based on what you have learned? What conditions can you accept and which ones can't you anymore? So use your past jobs, even if you had as many as I have, not as something to be ashamed of, but as the foundation for understanding where you are right now and what you actually want. So a long, varied CV isn't just confusing and inconsistent one. It might look the way to a company that only knows the standard rules of the game, but to you, it's a resource. It's a map you can use to find your dream job. So I really hope this episode gave you a bit more clarity about your dream job. And if you landed here and this has been helpful, please like it, comment, share it with someone who might need it. And if you want to actually put the needs exercise into practice, come join my WhatsApp channel, because every week I create a challenge according to the episode's topic. And what we are talking about this week, it's actually naming the need behind your working goal. I also run monthly live events. So I also run monthly live events. So check the description. So check the links in the description to join my WhatsApp channel and my Eventbrite channel. I hope this episode has been useful for you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.